God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I truly believe if you accept these words into your heart, you're going to have a life filled with happiness, joy, love, and peace. But if you reject them, your life is filled with sorrow, with resentment, and a little bit of suffering. This is my story of serenity. I grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, which is about a city, whoa, I heard that, which is about a city about 50,000 people. Now you understand why I'm excited. It's a city of 50,000 people. And I had a really great life growing up there. You know, I was pretty good at sports. I was really good at school. I had a ton of friends, and I had my fair share of boys chasing me around the neighborhood. I had my entire world figured out by the time I was 12 years old. I used to keep this box underneath my bed, and inside this box I would put pictures of what my life was going to look like when I got bigger. So I had a picture of this really tall, dark, handsome man who was, of course, going to be my husband, pictures of what my kids were going to look like, pictures of this huge white house with a white picket fence. I had the paint colors picked out, I had the kitchen picked out, and I had no reason to think my life wasn't going to go exactly as I thought because I had 12 years of validation behind me. My strongest relationship at this time was with my father. He was my favorite person, and he was also my biggest fan. My dad would drive 4 hours to watch me play a game of basketball, and while I have a very decent jump shot, it's probably worth about a 30-minute drive. But when I was 16 years old, everything changed. It was the summer before my sophomore year in high school, and my dad came home from work early. He asked me and my younger brother and older sister if we could leave for a while so we could talk to our mom. And you could immediately tell something was wrong. One, I could see it in his face, but two, he's never made a request like that before. So we all left, and I was the first one to come home, and I see my dad sitting upstairs looking somber, deflated, and nothing like this superhero figure that I knew so well. And I obviously sat down with him and asked him what was going on. And that's the day that I learned that my dad was a gambling addict. And he had just shared that news with my mom that, you know, he'd gambled away pretty much the life savings that my parents had. And my mom was a school teacher, and my dad sold insurance, so we didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't have possibly understood the magnitude of the information and how the trajectory of my life was going to change by hearing that. I also really didn't understand addiction. I didn't really get it. And I knew that my dad went through drug and alcohol recovery when I was really little, but I never saw my dad struggle with drugs or alcohol, so it wasn't a reality to me. But my mom, for years, was on the receiving end of my dad's addictive behaviors, which included lying and cheating and deceit and irresponsibility, words that I would never use to describe my dad. So for her, she couldn't bear to go through this all over again. And just like that, she asked my dad to move out. For a 16-year-old girl who loves her dad more than life and has her whole world figured out, I didn't respond to this very well. I spent the next few years full of resentment toward my mom and also trying to fix my father. I didn't get why he just couldn't stop. Why do you have to go to the casino? Do you not remember what happened the last time you went? My dad would try to explain that when he was on his way to the casino, all he could think about was what he was going to do when he was going to win. My dad's not a bad guy, just had a pretty powerful addiction. Well, I failed to fix my dad. He continued on that path, and I failed to fix my parents' marriage. So I needed some sort of control in my life, and I started running. And thankfully and quickly got consumed by all the life lessons that sport teaches you. You know, when you're going out for a run, you have no choice but to put one foot in front of the other. You have to take your run 1 mile at a time. You can't get to mile 5 without doing all the 1 through 4 in between. And if you run far enough and you run hard enough, you're going to come across a hill. And when that happens, you have choices to make, right? You can either tell yourself, I've ran far enough, I ran long enough, I'm going to turn around and go that way, or I'm going to go left or right. Those roads look a little easier. Or you can tell yourself, if you're just willing to put in the hard work and make it up the hill, that you have to believe on the other side that there are roads that are smoother and maybe with a little less potholes. So I decided I was going to take that same mentality with my life, and I was going to go get everything that was in my box underneath my bed. So I start moving 1,000,000 miles a minute. I go to college, I graduate early. I go to grad school, I graduate early. I find myself in Philadelphia when I was 24 years old, completely lost. I had been so fixated on getting toward this place in life where I was going to be happy that I lost myself along the way. And for the next 2 years, I started to feel like I don't actually think I want to get married. And I don't think I want to have kids, and I really don't want to live in some big white house in the suburbs. And I didn't have a plan B. It was really scary. It was a really lonely process, but I started to feel like I wanted a bigger purpose, a calling, something that would make me feel something, that my life was meaningful, that I was helping people. And I was looking under the proverbial rocks, and I was reading books and doing all the things that they tell you to do when you're trying to find yourself, and I couldn't figure it out. If someone could just tell me what it is, I'll do it. So I did the smartest thing I could think of, and I quit my job. I quit my job because I thought if I took away my security blanket that I would be forced to figure something out. I would have to. And if there was one thing that I knew about myself at this time, it's that I was a runner. Every morning at 5:30, you would find me on the streets of Philadelphia. It didn't matter if it was Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, if it was spring, summer, fall, or winter, if it was raining, if it was sun was shining. I felt so much like me when I was running. I felt in control, I felt invincible, I felt strong. I liked the motion of my body moving forward. And every day on my run, I would pass a homeless shelter. It was about a half-mile away from my house, called the Sunday Breakfast Rescue Mission. And I never gave a damn about the people that I saw in front of that homeless shelter, because what do I have in common with a bunch of guys who are homeless? In fact, I ran on the other side of the street with my headphones in, at least until May of 2007. There was a group of guys that started to take notice of me, and they started to wave at me. And I'm from a good Midwestern town, so if you're going to wave at me, I will wave back at you. And we started to build this fun rapport over the next couple weeks, and they became my dependable cheerleading squad. And just like that, some idea happened. I thought, why do I get to be the runner? And these guys have to be the homeless guys on the corner. Fortunately, I was smart enough to know that running does not discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're white, if you're black, if you're rich and you're poor. It doesn't matter if you're some 16-year-old messed up kid. And I didn't think it mattered if you were homeless or not. Running makes you feel like you can fly. I'm going to start a running club for this homeless shelter. So I call up the director, I tell him my idea, and he tries to think of the nicest way to tell me that homeless people do not run. And I asked him if he could just ask them and see if there's any interest. He tries to get me to volunteer in the soup kitchen. I said no. I tell him I'll take care of everything. I'll be there 3 days a week. I'll get shoes. I'll get clothes. If he could just ask them. And he tells me he'll ask, but not to get my hopes up. Well, as I mentioned, I quit my job and I was interviewing, and I had been offered this amazing job at this huge corporation in Philly, more money than a 26-year-old needs, and stock options, health benefits. I tell you, if there was any part of me that wanted that life that was in that box under my bed, this is how I was going to get it. So I took it. I took it and thought, maybe my purpose isn't at this company, but it allowed me to do something different. And I asked for 5 weeks if I could just get this running club stabilized, enough people involved that it would work without me. So they said yes, and I had 5 weeks to get this thing going. So after badgering this director, I'm very good at badgering, by the way, I get a call back, and he says, okay, Ann, there are 9 guys that want to run. What's next? So I'm really excited. I get shoes, I get shorts, I get shirts, I get socks, I get everything donated, and I go up to the shelter, a little bit smaller room than this is. I walk in and I meet the guys for the first time, and I had felt like I had found my people. I had no idea how starved for human connection that I was, and how much that was missing in my life. And I was very drawn to them because of a very simple, obvious reason, which is that they reminded me of my dad. And the most important thing that happened that night was not me giving them shoes or clothes, but I brought a piece of paper with me that I called the dedication contract. And it had some rules and ethos and principles on it. And it said, if you want to be a part of the running club, you have to show up every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And you have to be on time at 6 a.m. You have to come with a positive attitude, being willing to respect yourself and support your teammates. I didn't look at these guys and say, gosh, you guys are homeless. It must be really tough living in this shelter. So you're probably not going to make it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you're probably going to be late. I bet it's really tough to sleep in here. Here I was, a complete stranger, And I looked at them as if they were capable of absolute excellence. And you could tell that no one had looked at these guys in a really long time, if ever in their lives, with those types of expectations. We signed that piece of paper that night, me too, and we had our first run on July 3rd of 2007. I had a bunch of media contacts in Philly from my prior work there, and I wanted to get the word out. I wanted to get more people involved. And so I call them and tell them what's going on, and their reaction is the same as the director of the shelter. Oh, you mean you're raising money for the shelter? You're having a run to raise money for the shelter. No. The guys in the shelter are going to start a running club, a running program. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Homeless people are lazy. Homeless people don't want to work hard. Aren't they drinking all day anyway? How are they going to get up and run? So those unfortunate stereotypes that surround those who are experiencing homelessness. And then there's this elitism about running. If you're a runner, especially a morning runner, you are disciplined, you are focused, you are ambitious, you are determined. You're type A, a little anal. So how can somebody who's homeless be a runner? So I show up that day, I'm a little early, all the guys are outside bouncing around excited, and every single news outlet is on the corner waiting to ask these guys this burning question of why they're doing this. And they walk over and they start to talk to Mike and to Darren and Joe, and they get the most obvious of answers. God, I used to run in high school and I was pretty good at it. It's about time I get healthy, I'm getting older. I wanted to meet some new people. You could just feel the humanity sink into these reporters. And all these stories start to be written about this unlikely group of people running from the corner of 13th and Vine in Philadelphia 3 days a week. And our group starts to get bigger. And over the next couple of weeks, 2 simple observations happened for me in my life that helped me realize this is what I'm supposed to do. One was that these guys were showing up every single day and they were on time. I learned through my dad that you cannot force anybody to change, especially a grown man. And secondly, the reaction that I would get, I would bring this poster board each morning and I would put the names on the left and the numbers at the top to represent the miles we would run, and I would color into each one of their names after each run. And these guys would just push and shove for the best seat in the house behind my shoulders to watch me give them credit for the work that they did. And that's when I realized we are just all the same, aren't we? Everybody in this room is looking for the exact same thing, no matter which country you're from, no matter what language you speak. We all want to be noticed, appreciated, loved, valued, and cared for. We seek it out in our relationships. We leave jobs if we don't feel that way. We end marriages. So this vision starts to form about, well, what if we can truly change the way these guys see themselves? If we can get them not to see themselves as homeless, but somebody who is disciplined, a runner, a teammate, an athlete, and change their emotional state, can we actually truly change the direction of their life? And frankly, how else does it work? And what about all the other people in Philly that need a program like this, and all the other homeless shelters out there that also need a program like this? When you're 26 and naive, it works a lot in your favor because you have no idea how hard things are. And on top of this, my personal life is finally starting to make some sense. After 10 years of carrying around all that garbage and anger and resentment, I had nothing good came from my dad being a gambling addict. Nothing good came from my parents getting separated and divorced. Made me question everything about what I thought was real. But I also realized if my dad wasn't a gambling addict, if my dad didn't have that same affiliation with these guys that I saw, I would have just kept running. I wouldn't have given a damn about them. And when your life starts to make sense like that, you start to pay attention. And I knew this was what I was supposed to do. So I did what any respectable 26-year-old would do, and I called my mom. I called my mom because I wanted her to tell me that this was a good idea. She didn't think so. So I called other mentors. I called other adult figures in my life. Someone just saying that this is an admirable thing that I should do. And everybody thought it was admirable, but also I should grow up. And what do you mean you're going to do this for your job? Like, you're going to build a program, and how are you going to pay yourself? What about healthcare? What about when it gets cold and rainy and these guys quit? You should just take the job and think of yourself. You can help these guys when you can on the side. And I knew this was going to be a big moment in my life, and I created 3 scenarios in my head of how this was going to go. It was going to go one of three ways. One, what if everybody's right? And you know what? I should think of myself, right? Like, I'm volunteering, I'm helping out when I can, but I need to be a grown-up and take this job. I couldn't do that. I was just in too deep. I knew I would spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened to those guys and everybody else out there if I just would have nurtured this idea. Option two, what if everybody's right and I don't take this job and I do this and all these guys quit and winter comes and it does get hard and I'm left with empty running shoes, a very bruised ego, and no job? Well, I thought I would dust my ego off and I would find another job. But the third option was, what if I'm right? What if you truly can change the direction of people's lives by getting them to change the way that they see themselves? So because the worst case scenario didn't seem so scary anymore, the choice became obvious. I didn't make it to that job. I surrounded myself with people much smarter than me, and we started building and growing and learning and listening and screwing up so much and fixing those mistakes and then screwing up all over here again. But over the next 6.5 years, we built a $6.5 million nonprofit national organization helping thousands of people across the country with a 46% success rate of moving people from a state of dependency to living outside of the shelter. And my life was so full of purpose every single day, but 6.5 years in, all of a sudden those voices became again, that it's time to do something else, it's time to move on. Voices that I fought for a very long time, but then I had to realize about myself that I'm an entrepreneur. My talent and gift to the world is creating community. So I stepped down in 2012 and I started a new company that I have been building and growing for the last 4 years of my life. And you know what? In a couple years, it'll be time to move on from that as well. It is so easy to get stuck in situations that are no longer serving us. It's just easier. We stay in relationships that are unhealthy because it's scarier to leave. We stay in jobs that we're no longer learning from or growing from because it's scarier to find out what's out there. It's much easier to stay on the flat road than to climb the hill. So my hope for all of you is that you learn to embrace and understand the things that you cannot control and let them go, and grab onto the things that you can. And the things that you can control, choose wisely, choose often, choose boldly, and choose authentically. Thank you.